Hi, this is Brian Pash, and welcome to another podcast. On today's show, we have Mike Cavanaugh. He's the Executive Vice President of Max Digital. Mike, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me on today, Brian.
Well, automotive retail is going through massive innovations, and dealers are waking up to a new reality that includes looking for efficiencies, reduction of labor costs, and software fees. And Mike, I wanted you to have on the podcast because your company is really aligned with what I've been telling dealers, that they need to make the car the star. Calculators don't sell cars. We need to build value and help them make a decision about which car meets their needs before we talk about affordability. But before we jump into today's specific topics, if someone's not familiar with Max Digital, can you give us a little thumbnail, how long you've been in business and what type of products you offer dealers?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So Max Digital has been in business for 18 years. We started off as a company that many people know as First Look in the inventory management space, pricing and appraisal of used vehicles. We also do syndication, third-party websites, window stickers. We got heavy into merchandising, digital merchandising before it was even a term that many people were familiar with. And over time have become really an industry expert around automating digital merchandising to help with SEO, to help with how vehicles show up on third-party websites. And we've gotten into digital retailing. Again, before that was really a term, building tools that help, to your point, make the car the star and really provide value and pricing proof points and the details around the high value packages, options, details of the vehicle. And I've continued to go down that route for some time now, providing value to consumers in that space.
Well, Mike, as I've been traveling the country for the last 2 years before the COVID crisis hit, I was telling dealers that they had a clear brand promise. They had to simplify their websites, stop playing games with price and make the car the star. And that includes great photos, great descriptions, and then greet or communicate with consumers who are on your website with questions instead of chasing them later through lead forms. So let's first lock into one particular product value that I don't think dealers understand is the importance of describing the vehicle. Now, every dealer listening to today's podcast knows that if the right option codes are not in the DMS, that when vehicles get syndicated, they're going to be missing key features. Your software really fixes a lot of the problems that dealers have, not only with the merchandising and syndication, but proper descriptions. Now, one point that you mentioned was that these descriptions oftentimes trigger these fair price, good price, great deal banners on third-party classifieds. I'm not sure dealers understand that very clearly. I surely didn't. Mike, give us a thumbnail. Why is your software really changing the game to make sure dealers' cars on third-party portals are properly priced or valued?
Great question, Brian. So part of what we started doing several years ago was automating this merchandising piece because it started off with an efficiency. And we realized that dealerships spent an enormous amount of time handwriting descriptions for vehicles, and they wrote things that maybe they thought would be a good idea to describe to the customer. And there were things like floor mats so clean you could eat off of them, Sunday driver, all of these things that didn't provide a ton of value to the consumer. But I've been in the car business for going on 30 years probably now, and it's things that we've kind of always said about the vehicle. But what customers really cared about, or consumers, shoppers really cared about, were what were the high value packages and options this vehicle had on it. And on your website, there's different formats on websites that display this information differently. And some of these websites decode this information pretty well. However, a lot of it is left off because basic VIN decodes don't include this information, especially on certain makes and models of vehicles. So our software takes a record, and we've got about 35 million records of vehicles from OEM original window stickers is the best way to think about it. And we take the original equipment that's on a vehicle and include that as part of the description of that vehicle. We include it the way that the manufacturer intended to merchandise the vehicle, and we actually optimize for terms that consumers commonly search for, like certain manufacturers consider a heated or cooled seats. They call them ventilated seats, or we refer to them as cooled seats. We do things to help consumers recognize the terms that they would commonly search for, commonly recognize. And to your point about third-party sites recognizing this data, what a lot of folks don't know, and dealers have historically been very frustrated with, is that they would think they would buy a car very well at the auction. They would get the vehicle on their website, they would syndicate it not only to their website, but to all the third-party sites that they use, and then they would see it show up on a site, and it would show up as a fair deal. And they would say, I own this car really well, I've got it priced really competitively when I look in my IMS, however, it's showing up as a fair deal, not a good deal or a great deal. And a lot of that is based on your description not having the proper equipment, the proper terminology in there. So we automate that to help dealers' vehicles show up as they should. Not power book vehicles with equipment that they don't have, but include all of the information that they would want to be in there that consumers actually care about. And that's something that we do. We not only save the dealership time by doing this for them and automating it by decoding this information with our library, but we also set them up for success when it comes to third-party sites.
Meaning, Mike, if somebody accidentally left off a backup camera in their description, could that impact the valuation marker that a third-party classified would show?
Yes, dramatically. So when you're comparing a vehicle data set for a good deal, great deal, fair deal, in many of these cases, they're looking to see certain packages, certain vehicles that have certain equipment bring more value, just like they do when you appraise a vehicle at the sale. So when we catch this, looking at our library of original equipment on the vehicle, and we ensure that it's included on there, your vehicle is going to be properly analyzed, properly assessed when it comes to that third-party website.
Well, that's helpful because I don't think I've been very cognizant of the fact that these algorithms were that tuned to that. Now, I know that there's a whole culture of dealers going in every morning and tweaking prices a little bit to stay in that good value marker. But maybe they're on a fool's errand if their descriptions are really working against them. Is that a fair statement?
That is a fair statement, and people have made mistakes both ways. And I saw this. I was the COO of a 28-store dealership group before I worked at Max Digital. And I would look at merchandising almost daily in that role because of how important it was, and see some cases where somebody would underprice a vehicle because they didn't realize that they had a certain vehicle that had high value packages and equipment on it, and they would price it based on the wrong competitive set. So they would price it wrong from the get-go. And in some cases, when you're only looking at and trying to rush through the process of repricing your vehicles, if you don't look at the proper competitive set, you can give away gross profit that's very hard to earn, especially today, and incredibly hard to earn just by missing some of these key things that we help automate for a dealership.
Yeah, and I would assume that is even more critical on used cars because dealers may very well be able to decode a vehicle of their own OEM manufacturer, but maybe not so much on a car that they take in on trade. Mike, I want to pivot a little bit because in addition to the descriptions, making the car the star has to be a total merchandising experience on the VDP. How are you helping dealers, other than just the description, to give the consumer the tools they need to know if the car is right for them? Because if we don't establish a good match, then all the digital retailing tools in the world are not going to do anything because, well, they're not ready to buy. How are you helping, in a sense, the digital retailing movement or remote retailing movement by giving the consumer better tools than the default website platform would show to help them pick a car that's perfect for their needs?
Another good question, Brian. So we've recently released a tool right after NADA this year called Max BDC. And this is a tool that was originally designed for use in the BDC, but we've already seen many dealerships use this outside of the BDC as well. But it's a tool that helps your employees really become experts on all of your inventory. And when you think about new cars, there's training that happens on new cars. People tend to understand, their makes and models that they have at their dealership. But when it comes to especially off-brand used vehicles, many times people have no idea what the details of that vehicle are and how that may compare to another maker model, especially if you're comparing several off-brand vehicles. So we have a tool, Max BDC, that helps your employees and helps the consumers understand all of the details of these vehicles, helps them build a garage of vehicles, compare them to each other so they can see the difference between maybe two different types of a BMW X5 and an Audi Q7 if they're comparing them to see, what features, what packages, what options they have on them. And we also allow you to serve up the market data for them. So not just an arbitrary kind of good deal, great deal, fair deal, but how does this actually compare to the market average and what are the listings? So without having to have that consumer abandon your experience or your controlled environment and go back to a third-party site to do this research on their own, because we all know that they do that, you provide that information for them to help them understand how your vehicle is unique and how that compares to the market. We even have the ability to allow them to compare how does that compare to values like KBB or NADA or Black Book, whatever you choose to use to help display your vehicle, as well as MSRP. Right now we're in a scenario where, if you've got a late model used vehicle, you may be tens of thousands of dollars less than MSRP. So with the aggressive rebates and incentives that are on new cars, if you are trying to make some additional money and you are trying to sell some more pre-owned vehicles, you can help build the value in that with data. And I think we often neglect the power of the data that is available, and we try to make that data easily available so that it can become a really valuable tool.
And dealers who are listening to today's podcast, listen carefully to this. It's very important what Mike just said. I've been telling dealers they need to engage consumers when they're on the dealer's website, meaning staff your virtual showroom. Instead of popping up forms saying, hey, I'll get back to you later when I'm ready to serve you, imagine reimagining what the VDP looks like with tools that properly describe the vehicle and call to action buttons that says, get online help right now, or ask me any question right now. And imagine your remote sales team with tools like Max BDC, who can screen share and collaborate with the consumer and build that value. And then if the consumer says, great, I want that car, transition right into a digital retailing experience. And what I think dealers have been missing is that they've been praying that the magical button that says customize my payment is going to transform their business, and they missed that payment calculators don't sell cars. It's the experience of that collaborative, discovery of what fits. So I'm so glad to have you on today's podcast, Michael, because we've been spending a lot of times on the tools, but before you can dance, you got to put on the shoes and get dressed up and get ready to go. And we need these tools more than ever because not only it's stay-at-home restrictions, but now consumers know there's a faster and easier and more convenient way to buy a car. I want to pivot again, Michael. You and I, prior to our recording, we're talking about how difficult it's been in Michigan for car dealers, where over 90% of car sales are down and flooding on top of that. And of course, I live in Florida. Florida has had, its own share of problems. New York and New Jersey, where I grew up, and California, just some examples. These dealers have been impacted harder than others. And I do know everyone's looking for cost savings. So I want to give our listeners two immediate ways to save. Number one, you have been recently added to the GM co-op program, so IMR funds, for your entire package, which could be the syndication of the vehicles, the merchandising of the vehicles, the trade value of the vehicles, all co-opable. Is this 100% co-opable, Mike? What can you tell us about the new GM program?
100% co-opable to answer the question, Brian. And, over the last 2 months, we've really only exclusively been talking to General Motors dealers to help save them money. Everybody has cost cutting at the top of their mind right now. When sales are down, when employees are furloughed, we're trying to do more with less. We're trying to save money however we can. And we've been able to show dealers how I would say the average amount that we've been able to save dealers in software fees is around $14,000 annually. So it's a pretty large amount. And, it's everything from syndication, window stickers, used vehicle pricing and appraisal, new car pricing, merchandising. Really a total suite of products that for a General Motors dealer with IMR funds available, it can be, no money out of your pocket to do this. So it's a tremendous value.
Right. And Mike, I went to your website, which is maxdigital.com, and dealers who want to follow along, just go to the resources tab at the top and then click on OEM partners, and you'll see the different OEM programs that Max Digital participates in. And of course, you'll see there's Buick, Cadillac, GMC, Chevy, of course, BMW and Mini as well. So, Mike, when we talk about cost savings of $14,000 in software fees to have a integrated merchandising, syndication, and I'm going to call it retail platform, what type of products would a dealer be able to replace? So if they pick your package or choose to just go to Max Digital, what are some of the tools that they would be able to cancel?
Right now, what we see most commonly is, dealers that avail of HomeNet for syndication. They're able to, forego the costs they have there. The pricing and appraising that they do through vAuto, the new car pricing through Conquest, even with some of our trade tools, KBB on their site, they can forego that as well. So I've had some dealers save substantially more because I think rates vary depending on, are you part of a group, are you a single rooftop, when did you sign your contract? I had a dealer today that was paying over $4,000 for something that we could give them for a small fraction of that. So it varies by dealer, I think, based on what tools you're using and what you're paying. But right now, it is top of mind to save money. However, a dealership can save money, and we're happy to help them. I think there's a lot of great tools, and we do business with some of the largest dealer groups in the country: Lithia, Hendrick, Penske, and they've used us for over a decade. And part of it is because the tools are great, but the other part is that we have not raised our rates for our dealers. When we sign up a dealer, we never raise our rates. We have had the same rates once you sign a contract with us. That's been kind of a tenet of our business. And so, when you really stand by a dealer, especially during a challenging time like this, having a price that you can count on, and you can count on not just a temporary break, but the same steady cost over year after year after year, it really helps run a business.
Well, I would say that dealers who are looking for efficiency plus realize that their website and BDC need to be armed with more consultative tools. Changing for a horizontal, just cost saving is one thing, but really dealers need to be more proactive in thinking that digital retailing only works when a consumer's ready and set to buy a particular vehicle. Whatever we can do, whatever tools we can empower our sales associates, our BDC teams with the tools to build value in any new or used car, I think that's the bigger story. One other thing that, Michael, I wanted to share with our listeners, we're part of this podcast series called Road to DMSC. And DMSC this year is virtual. It's July 13th, 14th, and 15th. And we're assembling the best of the best in the dealer world, dealer principals, general managers, marketing managers, the best technology companies like Max Digital to talk about how automotive retail has been reimagined. And you're going to be bringing some data to DMSC to share, especially on sentiment. And one of the things I wanted to ask you, since you survey consumers throughout the year and provide that data to your customers, you recently surveyed 3,000 people and have some benchmarks pre-COVID, post-COVID. And I don't want to steal the thunder because you're going to be sharing some of this data in just a few weeks at DMSC Virtual Online. But Mike, give me one stat from this 3,000 person consumer survey that you think dealers need to hear about right now.
So probably the most important stat out of this is this one stat right here, or these couple stats that tie to the same topic here, is that when we talk to people that plan to purchase a vehicle in March, right, over the next 60 days in March that plan to purchase a vehicle, and we talked to those consumers in May and said, what has changed about the timing of when you plan to purchase your next vehicle? Only 22% of people said that the timing of when they plan to purchase their next vehicle has not changed.
Hmm.
20% said they plan on delaying it around 90 days. 26% said that they're delaying it 3 to 6 months, and 23% said that they'll be delaying it 6 months or more. So I think that was some really meaningful data. And this was, again, across the data set across the country of 3,000 consumers. And so I think it's worth noting that there is some consumer hesitancy in there when we hear all these macro analysis across the country about consumer sentiment and consumer confidence. I feel that is truly real right now when people think about delaying a major purchase like this for that type of a time period.
Well, it would be impossible for anybody to look at how many millions of people have filed for unemployment and not think that some of those people were going to buy a car and now don't feel comfortable doing, even if some of the manufacturers are offering, 4 months of payment forgiveness and giving them maybe a very short runway. But for many people, they don't know if in 4 months they'll be working again. So that's really great data. And that's why we all, as an industry, need to step back and hear from what successful dealers have done during COVID to pivot. I was talking to a dealer today, Mike, who had prepared for digital retailing. They followed my advice for a modern brand promise, simplifying their website. And in the month of May, they will hit a all-time store sales record. In March, they were on pace for a record. The last week killed it, right? That's no surprise to you. April was horrible, but now May, because they were ready, because they had the process in place, they're going to have a all-time record May. Now, this is in Florida. And Florida had, obviously by appointment only still, that's their mode of operation. It's just about how do we learn from the best of the best. We're going to be talking with dealers who've moved to a single point of contact and eliminated the F&I office. We are going to talk to dealers who realized that they can sell just as many cars with half as many people. And some of you may be scratching your head who are listening to this and say, I don't believe it. I don't believe it. Well, we're bringing these dealers, these owners, these marketing managers together and collaborating in a live virtual conference experience. So I want to encourage you to go to digitalmarketingstrategies.org and buy your tickets. We're also going to have a virtual showroom. So you'll be able to go into the exhibit hall and meet with the different vendors, get live demos on demand. So Mike, your team's going to have to be ready to answer questions. Can you step up to that challenge?
Absolutely. We'll definitely be ready for that. We've, we were fortunate enough to keep our whole team in place, and we're getting back to hiring some folks right now as well. So, with the strong demand for what's going on right now and the ability to help save dealers quite a bit of money, we're positioned well to help quite a few people out right now. So we're looking forward to it.
That's great. So you don't have to wait for the DMSC conference to get a demo. You can go to maxdigital.com and see all their tools, especially dealers who are looking to save money and, more importantly, provide their sales associates with tools to do more consultative selling in real time when the consumer's on the website, not telling them no one's competent here to answer your questions, fill out a form, and we'll get back to you. So we are super excited to reinvent the conference and educational structure as well. As every dealer has reinvented their business model, so have we. So this year we made the very difficult decision to move away from a live conference because of the hotel's restrictions on how many people can be in a room. And then, Mike, I don't know what your philosophy is on flying right now, but we had a lot of dealers who said, our companies don't want us to be traveling. What are you hearing out there?
We've taken the same approach. I think there's varying degrees of confidence depending on what state people are in and what the regulations are in the state. And our employees' health and safety is paramount to us. So right now we are doing everything remotely. We aren't traveling right now either. So I think it's erring on the conservative side at the moment. So same kind of policy that many of your dealers have expressed.
Yes. And so what we're excited about is because it's virtual, we have a wider group of dealers who are participating in the panels. And Mike, I'm looking forward to having one of your top advocates and customer success stories on our panels on merchandising. So that's going to be fun to hear firsthand what better merchandising is doing for the customer experience and for sales. If you are listening to this podcast for the very first time, you should know that every Monday I release a new podcast with an industry leader or an automotive innovator. And for this series, which is called Road to DMSC, we're accelerating that because we have so many great stories to tell. We are warming you up for the DMSC conference. So every 4 or 5 days, we'll be releasing a new podcast. You could search for the Pash On podcast on the iTunes podcast channel or Google Play, on SoundCloud or Spotify, or you can go to brianpash.libsyn, that's LIBSYN.com, and you can see all the dozens and dozens of podcast interviews. Many of them are timeless, so don't miss them. And then, of course, July 13th, 14th, and 15th, we'll all be together in the virtual DMSC conference. Mike will be on more than one panel, and I hope that you will make sure that your team gets registered for the conference. Thank you so much for your time, and we look forward to sharing time with you again on a future podcast session.